This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Dean Guida on the show. He is the CEO of Infragistics, and he's the author of a book called When Grit Is Not Enough. And today we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to grow as leaders. Anyway, with all that being said, Dean, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background and what is Infragistics and why you decided to write this book, When Grit Is Not Enough.
Sure. Well, I'm the founder, CEO of Infragistics. I founded my software tools company 35 years ago, and we build UI and UX tools for professional developers used in a lot of the commercial apps you may already use, like every 911 system's built with our tools, Quicken, TurboTax, a lot of the trading, Charles Schwab, E-Trade, Bank of America. They're all using our tools to build both commercial and enterprise software. And we're really focused in on giving developers and designers all UI tools to build simple and beautiful apps. So grids, UI elements, data visualization. We also have we've expanded over 35 years. We're in 7 countries and have over 2 million developers using our toolkit.
Wow.
We have a couple other products. I'll just share with you really quickly. We have Reveal, which is an embedded analytics dashboarding engine that we sell to other SaaS software companies building modern business applications. So you quickly get all the data connectivity, dashboarding that you can include in your app. We also have an app builder, which is for professional developers that does design to code, from design systems to production code for Angular, React, Blazor on the web stack, and it's pretty amazing product. And then not a developer tool, really a business tool. We have a product called Slingshot, which is a data-driven work management tool that connects to all your business systems and really drives a data-driven organization, has full project management, chat, and you really drive this scenario where you're getting informed on what's happening in your business, collaborating on what are those signals telling you, and then creating experiments to improve business outcomes and just manage the whole workflow of running a business. So we've expanded quite a bit, but I'm happy to be here today on this podcast. I started off as a software developer building systems down on Wall Street and IBM and a lot of other places. So I went from software coder to running a global enterprise tools company.
Awesome. So what was that journey like? Like, what was that, why did you decide to, venture out into the entrepreneurship space, build your own tools and grow that instead of just sticking with, IBM or whoever?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur since I was a little kid. My parents got divorced when I was really young at 6, and then I just had to always figure out how to make money. And so I was always working and figuring out how to make money. Like when I was like 10 years old, I convinced our maintenance man in our apartments to let me do some of his work, and he paid me off book. And so I was always driven to be an entrepreneur. I loved writing software. I mean, I was a freelance consultant, and I love software. I worked on our products the first 5 years of our company, and last 30 years just running it. But I always loved being an entrepreneur. I love software and building things and solving problems. And the reason why I wrote When Grit Is Not Enough was to share everything I learned running a company over the last 35 years. So, and I still love doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. When you made that shift, a while back to, you said you were an entrepreneur, kind of from the start, but you started out, in a career somewhere, building up maybe some skills, some background, some understanding to kind of venture out and then take that risk of if starting out your own thing and getting out of the, I guess you'd say, the umbrella of the corporate America. What was the experience like for you?
Yeah, well,
was it nervous? Was it exciting, or a little bit of both?
Well, it was always exciting, that's for sure. And I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to have grit. I mean, it just takes a long time, a lot of hard work and ups and downs over many months and years to kind of achieve your vision or just be a running company on its own feet. So that's like fundamental. And then optimism, like being optimistic is like is another key ingredient. But what happened to us is once you get beyond like 10 people in your company where you no longer don't take a salary, fix business problems, that's where you start to get to, okay, you need to really build a good culture, have good processes, and how you can execute and keep growing and scaling your business. And so that's what I kind of cover in my book. And we had one point where we had $618 in the bank and a $580,000 a month expense structure, and where we had to come up with that money. We were like legally bankrupt, and we came through it. But you have these near death experiences that really make you go beyond just working harder, not taking salary to solve all problems. You really need to build a team and do it through a team to have resilience and sustainability. And so every entrepreneur kind of goes from that initial hard work, solving all the problems, to where now you got to start to build an organization that starts to execute that without you or not dependent on you.
And yeah, so talk to me a little bit about building that culture, because that's one thing that a lot of leaders struggle with, whether they get promoted into a role or they take a new position somewhere outside to a different company or even start their own business, and they have to build a culture. And sometimes you have to build that culture from scratch. Sometimes you inherit a bad culture that you have to shift over. How do you go about starting that?
Well, I'm a really big believer in, just being yourself, authentically who you are, what you are, and then, you build a culture around that. And I worked in a lot of companies that early on in my career that I saw what kind of culture I didn't want. And so you have to be very intentional about building a culture, and then you're always working at it. So like for us, like we, in any culture, you have to like establish trust. And like, that's a fundamental thing. Just trust on your team, trust amongst how you guys get work done. And it really starts with the leader, the owner, and to really build that. And so trust is how you really behave and act. So, we practice like blameless problem solving. So you want to share problems, you want to collaborate how to solve problems. And if you create a culture where you're like very hard on people for making mistakes, or you don't really collaborate openly to solve problems. So all your actions, all your tones, all your words, how you go about getting work done is your culture. And so you have to be very intentional about it, and you have to be intentional about it as you hire new managers, that they're living your values and exuding your point of view and how you want to get work done. And so it's very intentional. We also like to create like this environment. We put a lot of money into our headquarters where we created this like warm, welcoming, relaxed environment so that people could do their best work and solve problems and be comfortable and happy. We do a lot of things with food. So like just even food at conference tables and as we work. And so there's many points to creating a culture, but you're never done. I mean, you're never done nurturing your culture. And it really is the fundamental thing that creates resilience in a great company, is the culture, and it attracts talent and you keep talent. But like I said, it's an organic living thing that you have to constantly fix, nurture, encourage, and work at.
Yeah, it's just like a software product, right? You're never done. You're always making improvements, always growing the roadmap and going further. So whenever you get to that point where you're leading a team and you feel like you're getting
some things done. You mentioned that grit's not enough, and that's the title of your book. How would you define grit, and how do you know when it's not enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think every entrepreneur fundamentally has to have grit. So you have to have perseverance. You have to have a long-term point of view. You have to have tough skin to deal with all the problems and setbacks and challenges that you have in being an entrepreneur. Everyone just struggles. There's no, it's all a struggle. I mean, so you can't avoid that. And so, I mean, the way I define grit is just, staying to, from focused on a goal for a long period of time and keeping at it no matter what kind of setbacks you have. And so that kind of inherent drive and ability to stay at it is grit. And you need that as an entrepreneur. And then you need optimism as well. Like, there's things that you look back in hindsight and you're like, gosh, I should not have been so optimistic, but thank God I was, because how else could you, show up and think you're going to win? And then eventually you do win, but you put up, you have to, go through and solve and tackle and through a lot of obstacles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the other question is like, well, when is grit not enough? So like I said, you can, with grit and optimism, you can get a company to a certain point. But then once you have to then start building teams and processes and, hiring the right people and creating, I'm a big believer in a data-driven learning organization. And so, be intentional about that. I'm also really big believer in like really defining and your strategy, how you're going to grow and what new capabilities you're going to build over the next 3 years and what are your core strategies, and then like doing an annual plan with OKRs, objective and key results, kind of supporting that strategic direction. So I'm going to cover a lot in the book on all these things, but yeah, when grit's not enough is like you get to a certain point where you no longer can you solve your problems by not taking the salary, by just working harder, by solving all the problems. Like you get to a point where that's just not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And I know a lot of what you talk about is also that data-driven, environment and using data to kind of make decisions and help your business out. And sometimes, you push through with grit and your perseverance and going through, but you need that data, don't you? And how do we start incorporating that into our culture, into the way we make decisions and operate as a team?
Yeah, I mean, I think the single biggest thing you could do is be data-driven. So these fact-based decisions, and it starts with the top. So the leader needs to share information and share the data. But then there's a lot of other challenges where there's a lot of data silos where data is locked up in spreadsheets, PowerPoint, and business systems. So just socializing and saying, where is the record of truth for the different pieces of your business? And, we built Slingshot to help you do that as well. But being data-driven is just, it's no more, why is something happening? You're getting real signals from the market in finance, sales, marketing. There's so much data out there. And the things about once you become data-driven is that all of a sudden you realize, okay, now we're getting these signals why something is not working, but then you have to collaborate with your team to keep understanding, why. So you're getting these signals of what's happening. Then you collaborate with your team to, hypothesize why is that happening. And then you create experiments to try and change that business outcome with intentionally defining your hypothesis, intentionally saying what you want to measure and learn. And then you do this iterative process, which software engineers understand so well, where you're getting the signals, you're collaborating, you're experimenting, you're learning, and then you're having that agility to keep doing it if it worked, or you learn from it and you try something new. And so I'm a really big believer in data-driven, experimentation, agility, collaboration, and to drive business growth.
Yeah, I am too. I think data is so important because you can get down that rabbit hole of going off of gut, your gut feeling all the time. And that's important. It's important to have intuition. It's important to kind of go down that path, but it's also important to be able to back up, those feelings with data and use data to make those decisions so that you don't always have to rely on, the unknown.
Yeah, and I also believe that your gut and intuition needs to be part of that. So like I don't discount that, even though I'm a big proponent of data driven, but don't forget about those pieces. And the other nice thing about being data driven is that it really creates an environment where a lot of times like a senior person in the room will make the decision, or the most vocal or loudest person in the room will. When you come to a meeting with data to kind of talk about and support why something's happening and a hypothesis how to improve it, it's very compelling. And so then, even a low ranking person or somebody that maybe is not as verbose as others can really contribute to the company's success and participate in helping make things better.
Yeah. So help me understand, and I totally agree with you. I think whenever you're more junior in a position, you're like the low man on the totem pole, if you will, or you're coming in maybe just as a developer, but in the room you may have managers and directors or CIO or CTO, and they're all talking about something, and you have to use that data for decision. That helps you get leverage, helps you get buy-in, and sometimes maybe you don't want it to be your decision because you're a junior person, but you can present the data to steer someone in the right way. And my question is kind of, how do you get that data? What are some common pools of places where a junior developer or a manager may pull data, look for data in order to help back up a decision?
Well, I mean, from a developer perspective, you hopefully you've instrumented your app, so you have all kinds of telemetry data speaking to the customer experience, what they're doing, what they're not doing. There's all kinds of data in GitHub and in your in the software tools you're using. There's data in your sales and marketing systems telling you, okay, here's the messaging and the targeted group that you're going after, and then they came into your app, and then here was the experience. And so sometimes it's not the app usability issue, it's that you're targeting the wrong segment and of the market to bring into your app, and they're just not having that problem, and so they're not that yet you could not have you cannot have good outcomes of what your telemetry and your app's telling you. So there really is data everywhere, and so trying to understand that whole end-to-end experience of what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to improve usability or experience of your app, where you're trying to figure out what's the prioritization of a backlog item, just thinking about this with data and collaborating. Collaborating is really important. So, getting the right people and using data as you're collaborating, trying to figure out what's going on so you can improve it. So you need to know where your data sources are, and then contextually, then you bring them in and try and solve some specific problem.
Yeah, I know earlier you kind of hinted on some companies that have a culture of kind of hoarding data and keeping silos of data and not sharing that. How important is it to develop a culture of transparency and sharing that data? And what are some tools that are out there to help people do that?
Yeah, so either you're in a bad culture or a big company where there's data silos. So like it's either a big company and there's data silos, or maybe it's a culture where people protect data so that they can, which is really bad. But what happens more often than not is that data is just not is hard to find. So it's really that awareness. It's like I said, people, even though they can be trained on how to get data out of your CRM or finance, they don't really easily know how to go in there and get it. Or data is locked up in some PowerPoint spreadsheet that people don't even know it's there or where it is. So they're like in Slingshot, we created a business data catalog, and the data catalog is to really catalog all your data sources, and so you can easily certify this is trusted by IT. You can easily search with metadata and filtering to find the data across your entire company of many data sources, and that's just a really good way of like driving data driven, because it first starts with like, where is the data, like you ask, and then after you know where the data is, can I trust it? Because all data may, someone could have created a spreadsheet. That doesn't mean you can trust it. So it's like, where is the data and what data can I trust? Now let me incorporate that into how I solve problems.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense, because sometimes you get data from different sources, and like you said, you can't trust it because you don't know where it came from. Do you have a method of kind of validating that, or is there like a way that you could help a junior person or a mid-level person whenever they're presenting that data to have like documentation to back it up in case they're asked to validate that data?
Yeah, I mean, usually you go to the owner, like whether it's an executive or director, and you just ask them where is our where's our system of truth for customer contact information or sales data or sales forecast data or lead data or whatever it is. And so usually the owner of that area, finance or sales or marketing, they know where the trusted data is, and then you pull from that source. So that's probably the best step. If you don't have Slingshot, that's probably the best step, the way to go about things. And then, like I said, you have a culture of being data driven. Then you have executive and buy-in of, we have to share data, because if we, the only way to make better decisions and to drive problem solving out to the edges of your company is really sharing data and helping them use it to collaborate and solve problems.
Yeah, for sure. I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about two of the things that I hear a lot of our leaders struggle with that you talk about. And one of those is having tough conversations. And, a lot of times when you're a new leader, you may have been promoted into a position where you're now managing your peers and working with them. And sometimes having tough conversations with who used to be your peer and now you're the boss is very difficult. And also, it may be that you are a new leader because you got hired into a new company and you don't know people yet. So having those tough conversations of things that you're realizing is also a very difficult thing to do. What kind of advice would you have to someone on having tough conversations?
Yeah, well, first of all, tough conversations are hard for everyone. CEOs, VPs, experienced people, everyone. It's always hard to have tough conversations, but when you don't have the tough conversations, you actually ruin your culture. You ruin your team dynamics. You can really hurt your A players. You're allowing bad behavior to happen, and you as the manager, it's your job to address that. So I cover this in my book around having tough conversations, but you want to do it privately. You want to do it one-on-one, and there's a technique called situation behavior impact that I learned at Center for Creative Leadership. And so what you do is say, here's the situation, here's the impact that you had and on everyone that was there. And so you're being very specific to, not just like, okay, you're very short with people, or, you don't communicate enough, or, whatever the scenario is, you're actually grounding the person in the situation and then their behavior and then the impact it had. And so you really have to have these tough conversations, and because otherwise you'll create the culture of bad behavior is okay, and then your A players won't care anymore, and then you'll end up with a bunch of C players. So it's always hard, but you need to do it one-on-one and privately and certainly empathetically. But this technique actually helps ground things into where people can reflect on the situation and the impact they had, and then you ask them to work on it, and so that's one really useful technique.
Yeah, I like that. I like that technique a lot, because it seems like you're again using data to kind of facilitate that conversation about what the impact and things like that, instead of emotional, driven conversation.
Right.
What kind of follow-up do you have after something like that?
Well, it depends upon the severity of the situation. But if it's pretty severe, I mean, if it happens again, you follow up right away. Otherwise, if you have a one-to-one every week, you can like give compliments. I mean, so the inverse of that is like, you should compliment way more publicly, and tell stories of the behavior you want and the values you want. So, if you're constantly, talking about how someone did a good job around something, people listen to those stories, and it's defining the behavior you want. But But I would say, once a week, you have a 1-to-1 and you can say, hey, man, things are going well. Thank you for listening. And, it's for the betterment of the team. And so, I would say once a week. And if it just goes away, you don't have to keep talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely. I think it's a good approach to have, hopefully it goes away so you can stop talking about it and you moved on and the problem solved. And now you're not having those tough conversations as often.
Yep. No doubt.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about is another problem that I hear a lot of our people having is not only hiring valuable team members, but retaining them as well. What are some advice that you have for leaders on both hiring, good team members and making sure you get that right person, but also keeping them?
Yeah, I think, how you even write your job description is important. So you don't want to just you want to exude, what it's like to work at your company and what you'll be working on. So, things like, even though you have some of this boilerplate, 5 to 7 years experience here, JavaScript, whatever technical requirements that you may have or need, or if it's not a tech job, but you want to describe kind of your culture and even use tone and vocabulary and adjectives in your job description to kind of communicate the uniqueness of your culture and what it's like and what will they be working on. So that's kind of really important. Instead of just saying raw facts, you're like, okay, you'll be working on this BI system with other designers, building great visualizations, connecting to all different kinds of back ends. You'll be expected to, learn the code base in the first 3 months. And you'll be working, with these, so you're kind of like telling them, what is it like to when you're describing the role you want, and then what is it like to be working on the team. So that kind of helps on the front end. And then there's a lot of soft skill, which is really important, soft skill questions that you want to ask on the interviewing. It's kind of easy to do hard skill assessment, but the soft skills are what matter a lot for culture and cohesiveness and retention. And so, really have your soft skill questions up there. And a lot of things we I'm really big on creating a learning organization. Mm-hmm. And so we always ask okay, well, what have you learned in the last 12 months? What do you want to learn in the next 12 months? And so you're looking for that growth mindset and people that enjoy learning and what they're passionate about, and trying to align their business passion with the role and really hiring for that. And don't settle. I mean, hiring is so hard. If it takes longer, it takes longer, but just don't settle. And then once they're in the role, we do a 30, 60, 90, 180, what success looks like after 30 days, 60 days, 90, 180 at the end of the year. So you're thinking through what does success look like, and it's great for the person that you're onboarding so they know what success looks like at these different points in the beginning of their, their career with you. And that's another good process step. And onboarding is so important too. Those first couple of days, get them all the right software and equipment day one, orient them to everything day one, introduce them to all the different people across the company day one, really set the tone of how you want to get work done right from the beginning. And then, just checking in with them, having that open dialogue and creating a safe space for them to express themselves. And those are some good keys. And then what keeps people is culture. They like who they're working with, they like the manager, and they like what they're working on. Those are really important ingredients. Pay is important, but it's not the first thing. It's the fourth thing or the third thing, unless you're just not paying fairly. So those are the other things are more important, really understanding what is it like to work here, and then asking those soft questions and soft skill questions to understand how they'll fit in and find that right person that fits in with your culture.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think pay is important, but it's not number one. People won't quit their jobs for a 10% raise, if they love it and the culture's great and they love their boss. But if you got a crappy boss, you'll leave laterally.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on with that. What are some last pieces of advice or tips that you would have for a new leader that's coming into a new role that's, or maybe they've been in a role for a while, but they're looking to step up their game and become better leaders and just build a good team and good culture at their company?
Well, I think just being intentional about your own personal growth and, just cognitively saying what you don't know, what you want to learn, and then actually going and learning that and then doing it. There's nothing like experiential learning. Like repetition makes someone perform at a high level. So like invest in yourself to learn and then share that with the team. And so that's one thing. And then creating a good team and having high team performance has everything to do with the manager, everything to do with trust, everything to do with how you guys are communicating honestly and openly. And so those are critical things. Like culture and teams, you have to constantly nurture. It never ends. And so, you care about people. And one thing that really helps a lot, one technique is like I meet with our exec team once a week. We have a 2-hour meeting, and in the beginning of the meeting, we all check in, and it's so powerful. Like we check in personally and professionally. And so for like 5 minutes, you just check in personally, and you can share whatever you want. But I got to tell you, by sharing something personal, over time, you're building trust and rapport with your teammates, and it really creates an incredible bond. And that solves a lot of problems when things don't go well, and that creates a lot of trust and team cohesion. So, and then just being yourself authentically, like just show up just as yourself. And I believe in having fun. Like if you don't have fun, like it's just work. So you gotta have fun at work. And so all these things are important. But I can tell you, if you kick off your team meeting, go around the room, everyone shares something personally, and then we check in business too as well. But share something personal for like 2 to 5 minutes. Hey, I just went this weekend camping and we did this, or whatever it is. It'll create, it's amazing the effect it has on creating a good team.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that and being, you have to realize that you're at work probably, more than you're at home sometimes, it seems like, other than being asleep. And, you can't leave the stuff that happens at home always. That stuff comes with you. You're the same person, whether you're at work or at home. And it's good to share and let people know what you're going through, because you never know what that person's day was like or weekend was like unless they check in.
Yeah. And you don't have to share anything too personal. I mean, it's all up to you.
Yeah.
Close share with your team, but you just get to, like, if you love hockey, hey, I just watching the hockey game, or you love your dog, or you just had it, whatever it is, it creates that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the good stuff, the bad stuff, I just went to Carowinds and a great time with my kids. Awesome. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about where you went and what you did that weekend. Maybe you went rafting or something and had a good time. Or, it could be something bad, like maybe your dog passed away and you're just rough. You're going to have a rough week, and just, whatever it is, I think that's important to kind of let people know so they know how to approach you and just to, maybe help you out. So, Dean, this has been a great conversation. How can people connect with you online, learn more about the things that you're doing with your company, maybe pick up Slingshot for their organization, and or pick up a copy of your book?
Yeah, so DeanGuida.com is like my website, and that's like my book website, and you can get When Grit's Not Enough up on Amazon. Our company, we've kind of have grown a little bit, so we have Infragistics.com. That's where our UI and UX tool is for developers. Then we have RevealBI.io, RevealBI.io, and that's where our embedded analytics product is. And then we have the Slingshot app.io, and that's where our Slingshot website is. And we have appbuilder.dev, and that's where our app builder product is. So if you just go to infragistics.com, and you can find these other sites, but unfortunately we're a little bit more complicated now. I have to say all these things.
Awesome. I'll link all those in the show notes too at geekleader.com. If people can click through this episode show notes and find a copy of your book and your website and Infragistics as well. Dean, again, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate having you on. I think that was very insightful and helpful for our audience.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, John.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.